to my channel. My name is Lisa Alastuey, and on this channel, you will find a variety of inspirational and informational videos. So if that sounds good to you and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. My guest today is Siddique Farooqi, who is a sports commentator, host, and producer who covers bodybuilding news among other sports. I will be linking his Instagram in the description box for your reference. Welcome, Siddique.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. We finally made this happen. I know you've been in contact with me for the better part of really ever since we met at the Arnold Classic. So I'm happy that we could finally link up and make this conversation happen.
Yes, I'm super excited too that we're coming together to talk about the coverage of the bodybuilding world, which I know you know a lot about. Before we get into that, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background?
Sure. So, I mean, I guess as it relates to bodybuilding in particular, I've been with RX Muscle for the better part of, say, about a decade now. So, I mean, I've had the privilege really of covering bodybuilding sport, in many different facets. I started off with RX Muscle, really in the role of a station manager. And I mean, when I say station manager, my time with RX Muscle kind of transcends what we've seen, in terms of YouTube. And I mean, we're right now over Zoom. You have had so many different transitions technologically in the way that content is consumed. And when we started out, we were still very much website based, right? So you had to go to rxmuscle.com in order to access, our live stream and or to access any of our content. Obviously, then, very soon thereafter, YouTube really, came to the forefront as far as, content, bodybuilding content. And then obviously, you saw a big boom in terms of bodybuilding and fitness related content on YouTube. So naturally, things progressed at that point. So, this industry has seen a lot of change in terms of the way that it's been covered, in terms of the way that, content has been produced, interviews have been done, topics have been covered. So it's been, a rare privilege, having a front row seat to that, seeing it all play out and seeing where we are today.
Yes. How did you get your foot in the door?
It's a funny story because, if people see me in this industry, and I obviously, when people think bodybuilding, right, they don't typically think of someone like me, 185-pound guy, whatever. And it's funny because when I do content, I do interviews, I do shows. In the comment sections, you'll still get people wondering, oh, does Sid lift? Does this guy even lift or whatever? So, yeah, obviously not maybe the most natural fit for me in bodybuilding, but the way that it happened was really kind of out of left field. There was a job recruiter that I've worked with in the past. So my background is, I guess my quote unquote day job is in marketing. I've been in marketing for the better part, 15 years. So marketing and, my work in TV. And I mean, you asked me before, I guess, in terms of my background, I gave the bodybuilding specific background. The holistic background is that I'm also a, sports commentator. I've been doing TV, sports play by play, for over a decade now. I'm a public address announcer. So if you go to, a basketball arena or any game, the voice that you hear every time somebody hits a basket, that's me. I've had the chance to do that for, name it the ACC tournament. I've done some games for the New York Knicks. I'm in the Brooklyn Nets organization. So that's sort of been, my profession kind of varies between my job as a marketer, but then also, my work as an announcer, and then obviously what it is that I do for RX Muscle in the bodybuilding industry. But so yeah, how I got in was someone who had gotten me a job at a it was a financial services company as a marketer years ago. She contacted me because one of her friends knew who Dave Palumbo was, right? And so she was like, "Hey, there's this company," and this is when Dave Palumbo was still on Long Island. He currently lives in Florida. Um, so there's a company. They have a supplement company, but then they also have some sort of a TV network that talks about bodybuilding. I'm not sure what it is, but you have a TV background. your marketing, why don't you just go and have a conversation with them? Just go talk to them. You never know what'll happen. So I did that, had an opportunity to meet Dave. And, it was funny because when I was first talking to him, the conversation was about his supplement company, Species Nutrition. And, I kind of just saw from his facial expression, he wasn't very interested in what I was saying. And to him, it was probably the fifth guy off the street talking about how they could help with marketing, with social media, what have you. He's probably heard that before. But then when the conversation transitioned into TV, that's where his eyes lit up, because I told him I have a TV background, and he told me that he's trying to, revolutionize how bodybuilding media is covered, how bodybuilding coverage is done. So then we got into talking about, just as far as, what the channel is doing at the moment, what we could be doing, what we could be doing now, years down the road. And I think that's where sparks started to fly. And that's where, we really hit it off. So that was sort of how, I got into the sport, just working for RX Muscle. And then eventually, I got in with, if my work with the Olympia. So I'm their what's called the voice of God, right? I hate the term only because I believe in God. I'm not the voice of God, but what that term means is that voice that you hear in the arena, right? So I do for the Olympia, if you've been, like when the introductions are done, right? Like say at the Olympia press conference, I'm the one introducing the athletes onto the stage. The night shows, Friday night show, the Saturday night show for the finals. I'm the one introducing, like at the very beginning, right? The first voice you hear is, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to blah, blah, blah. This is the 2023 Olympia. That's me. So for me to have the opportunity to introduce, the MC Bob Ciccarello onto the stage, Olympia, the chief Olympia officer, Dan Solomon, the Olympia owner, Jake Wood. So for me to have that opportunity, it's been a pleasure. And then, this past year at the Arnold Classic where we met, I had the opportunity, to go on stage at the expo, their main stage, and interview the likes of a Jesse James West, of Larry Wheels, Eddie Hall, the legend, Flex Wheeler. So, these are all things that have progressively taken hold over time. Obviously very thankful to Dave for getting me into the industry. And then, of course, on the Olympia side, Dan Solomon, who recognized me and identified me as someone who could help out the Olympia. And then, the Arnold Classic, someone like David Bay, who, I guess I identified me as someone who can help them, with some of their interviews. So it's been a real journey, and some of the people that I've met. But, just the opportunity to cover these athletes, all the storylines, their personal development, their personal progressions. It's been really cool. And I know it's a very long-winded way of kind of answering your initial question, how I got in, but I felt like I had to include all that so to give some real perspective as far as the journey that it's been.
That's really interesting that you're taking your training from the TV world, the marketing world, and stepping into this bodybuilding world. What was that like for you, learning about the different bodybuilders, the business behind the scenes? What did that feel like, and what was that for you?
So to be honest, I'm glad you're asking this because, when I first spoke to Dave Palumbo, I kind of had this, in my, all my, I kind of had this, I don't want to say chip on my shoulder, but I had this, belief that, oh, well, it's a sport. And, I've learned other sports. Like, I didn't play lacrosse growing up, but, in terms of commentating lacrosse, that I learned it. I learned a brand new sport. Now I'm familiar with it. I love it. And I felt like I could do the exact same thing for bodybuilding. But, when I assessed how bodybuilding was being covered, and, at the time, we're going back to say 2013, 2014, there really wasn't much in terms of, coverage of the sport from a news perspective, from a quote unquote ESPN perspective. And I think that was sort of the objective, the objectives that we collectively held, that we wanted to, in a sense, ESPNize, how the sport was covered, to give the athletes, who put in so much sickening discipline, so much work, so much sacrifice in order to step onto a bodybuilding stage. We felt as if they deserved more coverage, more, in-depth coverage in terms of getting to know their story, getting to know their journey, getting to know everything that it is that they have to do, to be one of the best bodybuilders in the world. You know, and in terms of how contests are covered. But to dive beyond that, there are so many storylines that emerge, you know, as it relates to bodybuilding, as it relates to, you know, some diet related topics, you know, contest prep, you know, off season drama, obviously, personal stories, personal battles. You know, this has been a progression in terms of learning, not only, you know, how we felt as if the sport needed to be covered, but then also, you know, what is it that the fans want? What is it the fans expect? And what is it that they want to consume, right? Like we wanted to, you know, if you're not catering to the fans' desires in terms of, you know, what it is that they want out of, you know, out of their, you know, I guess the menu for how you're going to cover the sport. You know, back then it was a little bit more captive. There were only like, you know, a handful of media outlets or any sort of personalities talking about bodybuilding. Now, totally different story. Now it's, I mean, you have God, like everyone has, you know, a high-end camera, a microphone. Everyone could be a content creator now. Everybody could be a media outlet now. Everybody could be a reporter now. So obviously the game has changed. So when I first got in, it was a little bit intimidating because I thought I knew what I was getting into, but I really didn't know what I was getting into, right? Because I kind of just thought, all right, well, let me speak to the bodybuilding audience in a manner in which I think they want to be spoken to. But then you kind of get the idea that maybe that's not what they wanted. Maybe they wanted something a little different. Maybe they wanted something that, or maybe they just weren't, you know, prepared for what it is that I was trying to bring. So I kind of had to cater our coverage to what they wanted. And that's sort of been the evolution really ever since I started, right? Like trying to keep up with, you know, what the audience wants, right? Like, because at the end of the day, it's all about the audience. It's all about what it is that they are going to enjoy. Yeah, you're going to try new things that you want to see if, well, if they'll be able to adapt to it, if they will be, if it's something that they will, you know, enjoy. Because if they don't, then obviously you're trying to force feed something to someone. Then at the end of the day, back in the day, there were only like 5, 6 restaurants. Now there are like 32 restaurants that they could go to. So it's a lot easier for you to lose your audience in that sense. But you know, the perspective that I have of bodybuilding is not only just a, you know, coverage of the sport, coverage of bodybuilders, but again, you know, again mentioning the work that I do for Species Nutrition, I got an insight as far as how, you know, the supplement industry works, how, you know, all these things kind of play together, right? Because you're talking about the supplement industry, you're talking about, you know, high quality products, especially, you know, someone like Dave Palumbo, who, I mean, you know, he spares no expenses when it comes to the formulations, when it comes to the flavoring systems, when it comes to making sure that, you know, they're the top end items, right? They're the top 10, top line supplement items that someone's going to want, right?
Mhm.
So learning about that, learning about what bodybuilders want out of their supplements, then learning also, you know, again, how do you now pitch that product to a fan base that's not only a fan base of Species Nutrition, but then again, the crossover, the natural crossover between that and then say RX Muscle, where, you know, this isn't like any other sport where, okay, like for instance, UFC, like, you know, you have UFC fighters that have supplement sponsorships. Um, you have supplement companies that sponsor the UFC, sponsor MMA, sponsor boxing. But here's the difference: people don't tune in to the big UFC fight, right, and see, all right, name the fighter, you know, Islam Makhachev or whatever, right? And then they see, okay, maybe he has a supplement company on his shorts. They're not rushing to go buy that supplement because to them it's all right. Well, they're more interested in the fight. They're more interested in the fighter. You know, they're more interested in learning the style of the fight, the fighter. So similarly, again, if Chris Bumstead says, you know, take this supplement, do you know how many young people out there are going to take that supplement because they feel as if that's going to help them look like Chris Bumstead? Similarly, if Chris Bumstead says, you know, eat dog food after your, heavy leg day, dog food would sell out because people would literally be lining up to buy dog food because they feel as if eating dog food will help them look like Chris Bumstead. But you know, again, someone like Islam Makhachev, you know, top end fighter, if he's taking something or if he's eating something, you know, a fighter is not necessarily, a fight fan may not necessarily gravitate towards that food or that supplement item. They might be more interested in the fighting style that makes the fighter. Whereas in bodybuilding, it's what you're putting in your body is going to help you look, attain a certain physique. So I learning all these, interlinking correlations between the supplement industry, and then again, the bodybuilding world and coverage of the bodybuilding world, understanding, a bodybuilding fan. Again, that's been the joy, I guess, there's always I mean, in general, just in sports coverage and content creation, it's never stale. It's never going to be you're doing the same thing, same thing, something. You're going to have to constantly adjust, constantly evolve because fan bases, their tastes evolve. What it is that they want evolves. So I think that's been sort of the fun part, really, in trying to constantly adapt, constantly adjust, and constantly learn on the fly in terms of what it is that our audience wants, both on the supplement end, but then also on the RX muscle end, and just try to keep up with that in terms of giving them what it is that they want.
Okay. So yeah, that was going to bring me to my next question is, what do you find challenging about covering the bodybuilding world?
So, when you look at where we have come, say, over the course of the last 4 years, really, right? Because if you look back at our videos, and not just our videos, like RX Muscles video, I'm talking about the landscape. There's a lot of copycattery, right? So it's like, okay, well, this video is working for this guy, so now I'm gonna try that, right? This guy is using this style of a thumbnail, so I'm gonna try that now. This guy just covered this story about this guy who, you know, tore his right pec, doing this. So now I got a reaction video. That's somebody else going to do a reaction video. Somebody else is going to do a reaction video. The hot topic is the one that's going to get the reaction videos across the board. So, it used to be the case where maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a little bit more emphasis on the actual, bodybuilding conversation, on the actual, okay, well, we bring on a guest, right? The topic of the guest is going to be, the topic related to the guest is going to be, okay, well, so you're preparing for the Arnold Classic, or you're preparing for the Olympia. Talk to us about some of the differences between this year's prep versus last year's prep. Last year you came in a little less conditioned. How do you solve that conditioning issue going into this show? Or, last year you came in and, the judges said you were a little small, against some bigger lineup. Well, okay, what have you done to bulk up a little bit, try to add some quality size heading into, this year's contest? So, now it just seems as if you have a little bit more of the drama element. You have a little bit more of the off-topic element. And sometimes the off-topic element, sort of supersedes the actual bodybuilding conversation. So I think, that's been one of the changes. And I can't say it's a good thing, but again, things are cyclical, right? So you and me could be having this conversation in 2 years, and I could be telling you that, well, now we're talking about hardcore, dieting instead. Now we're talking about, concerns that competitors have with certain diuretics again, so these things are all cyclical. But I think that the challenge has been, again, always understanding what it is that the fans want to do, because you'll know very quickly, right? It's pretty transparent. Like YouTube, social media, it's not rocket science. I mean, you could clickbait all you want, right? But at the end of the day, if you put out a video, the fans want to see what it is. Sometimes it's something information related. Sometimes it's, we're at the Olympia, the Arnold Classic, and, prejudging just let out for classic physique. And we put up our reaction, a wrap up video, you'll know right away. People want to see that. Right. So if we put up some video where Dave puts out his, opinion on something, you'll know right away people want to see that. Sometimes we'll put out a video where it's just like, it's very apparent people didn't care about that topic. Or put out we used to do a lot more interviews to give you, again, some more context as far as how things have changed. We used to do a lot more interviews because interviews are a lot more consumed. People really wanted, all right, we brought this bodybuilder, get a little bit more of an understanding of them, get a bit more of an understanding of this topic, of this just happened or what have you. Now, I don't know, maybe fans are just, maybe just because they've seen the same bodybuilders, on every different podcast, or whatever. But interviews are not as common anymore, or just prominent anymore, just because we've kind of noticed that, as a fan base, they just don't really receive those very well anymore. Whereas, we used to get a certain amount of views even if we were to bring on a newcomer interview, now it's like, unless we bring on some A-lister, probably not going to do very well in terms of ratings or whatever, unless we come up with a real sensationalistic title, sensationalistic twist, something that's really like clickbaity, with thumbnail and everything like that. But again, those are tricks and techniques that only go so far, right? Because at the end of the day, yeah, how many times are you going to fool somebody into watching a video, right? I get it. Like the internet in general, I mean, even online publications, the titles are clickbait of sorts, right? But
Yes.
ultimately, people are not dumb. They see through things. They
Hmm.
pick up on certain things. So you can only pull that card so long before that even goes stale, whatever. So you really have to try to understand, okay, if people aren't watching our content, or if our numbers are a little bit down, why is that? Right?
Hmm.
Like, figure out what is it that they want to watch, because if you're not going to cater to that, then nothing's really going to change on that end. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. It's a very competitive space that I've seen online. There are some bodybuilding channels such as RX Muscle that is kind of in the topper echelon. Everybody knows that, that's in the bodybuilding world. But the clickbaity ones do catch up with you. We've seen some taken down, get community standards. They're not coming back. So I like that there's, quality shows, quality information that's not just trying to sensationalize bodybuilding, because it can be a controversial topic. So let's talk about the controversy in covering a controversial, and it's not a mainstream sport like others. How do you navigate all of that?
That's a good question, because you know, as much as we have talked about this in bodybuilding circles over the last, as long as I've been involved in the industry, that oh well, if bodybuilding wants to go mainstream, that we need to do this. That if this sport ever wants to go mainstream, we need to do this. And I think not too long ago, I think I finally came to the conclusion bodybuilding will never be mainstream. It's not meant to be mainstream. And I think the sooner we collectively just understand that, we'll be better for it. Why? Because, you know, inherently, right, there is PED usage in bodybuilding, right? I don't think I'm breaking any new ground. Um, we're not, you cannot look a certain way without taking certain PEDs. You cannot. Like, you could eat as many chicken breasts as you want. You could lift all day, all night. You could eat the absolute cleanest diet, but you could do 3 hour cardio, so you have no body fat, all that, whatever. Unless you're taking certain PEDs, you will never be, a certain size, a certain shape, a certain, carry a certain structure onto a bodybuilding stage. It's just not realistic. So with that being the inherent truth, the sport will never be mainstream, right? Because certain brands that cater to the quote mainstream audience, they are not going to want to co-sign uh but for bodybuilding. There's not. And because everybody has different interests, and you can't blame, and I'm not going to mention any specific brands, but there are certain brands it's just like, all right, well, if we hang up our banner on a bodybuilding stage, that means we're promoting this. We're endorsing this, exactly what's going on, right? So the lesson that I think I've learned, and I think bodybuilding fans are slowly coming to this conclusion, we're not going to be mainstream. Now, granted, there are mainstream crossovers, right? I mean, look, you're at the Arnold Classic, you have mainstream celebrities who are there. Because look, fitness in general, bodybuilding in general, and I don't just mean bodybuilding as in, everything that you see, on a bodybuilding stage. I'm talking about if you're going to a gym and you're looking to improve your physique, your health, you're building your body, you're a bodybuilder. You're just not a career bodybuilder. You're not a professional bodybuilder, but you're still building your body. Fitness in general, you notice this. Go to any gym now. Gyms are packed. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because that means people now more so than ever care about their health. They care about what they look like. And you know what? Even if it's out of some, superficial need to want to look better so that they can look better on social media, you're still doing something positive. You're still going to the gym. You're still doing something that's going to have a very positive impact on your physical health and your mental health. These are all things that are taken into consideration, right? When you consider, I guess, the mainstream crossovers between whatever the mainstream and the bodybuilding world. But it's just like anything else. I mean, okay, look, bodybuilding in and of itself is a quote unquote extreme sport. Everybody drives a car, but if you're driving a car 200 miles per hour like a NASCAR driver, you're a NASCAR driver. You're not just a driver, right? If you eat food, there's a difference between eating food and eating at a hot dog eating contest where you're supposed to eat like 48 hot dogs in 2 minutes, whatever. That's extreme eating.
Mhm.
Bodybuilding is an extreme sport, right? Like we know it. The human body is not meant to be pushed to such extents without certain risks. So I think people understand that. So I think covering the sport, I think we have to understand also that our audience is not the mainstream audience. Our audience is fans of bodybuilding. They understand what's the nature behind a bodybuilder. They understand what truly happens behind this. They understand what it is that a bodybuilder is signing up for when they partake in the sport. So I think that's one of the things that years ago I did try to, I guess, force that narrative a little bit, but just try to shift the bodybuilding coverage a little bit mainstream. But I quickly realized you're fighting a losing battle because I mean, like amongst my friends, right? Just to give you an example, my friends know that I work in the bodybuilding world. They have no idea what that entails. Just some of my friends know who Phil Heath is. They know who Big Ramy is. They know who Chris Bumps is. They know some of the bigger names, but beyond that, it's not like they really have any any interest or any understanding
Mhm.
of what truly goes on in the sport. So there is a fine line between bodybuilding and I guess the rest of sports fans and so on and so forth. Whereas what I've also noticed, the funny part is, within the bodybuilding fan base, right? You have fans that truly do not care about any other sport. They only care about bodybuilding. Like
Yeah.
I've met bodybuilding fans from England where like, okay, soccer is king, right? But to them, they do not care about soccer. They don't care about rugby. They don't care about cricket. They're just into bodybuilding. I met bodybuilding fans from Canada, where again hockey is king, yet they don't care about hockey. They only care about bodybuilding.
Mhm.
So I think bodybuilding kind of has its own world. It is a big world. It's a growing world, but it is its own world. And I think, the sooner we realize, all right, look, there's certain limitations as far as the crossovers.
Yeah.
You'll always have some crossover. Go to the
Mhm.
Olympia. Like Dan Solomon again has done a great job of this. He has brought in some quote unquote mainstream stars to be there featured prominently, to make appearances. You'll see Shaquille O'Neal, you'll see Mark Wahlberg, you'll see former WWE stars. You'll see a lot of like Mario Lopez. I interviewed him at the Olympia Expo back in 2019. You'll
Mhm.
have mainstream stars there,
Mhm.
and I think again, what is the commonality, right? You always see Mark Wahlberg working out, posting workout videos. The Rock, you'll always see him
Mhm.
posting workout videos. Mario Lopez, very into fitness, into boxing, into keeping shit in shape. So you have all those correlations there. But I think those crossovers will be limited, but I think they will have its own place. But I just think that bodybuilding and the bodybuilding world and the bodybuilding fan base, it is its own world, its own entity, and I don't really think there really is uh, a path really to having. You're not going to have ESPN cover the Olympia as an
Right,
example.
right.
Right? Like so, in a sense, are the media outlets us, the other ones out there? We
Mhm.
are sort of the ESPN, for bodybuilding.
Yes, yes. So let me ask you about your interview style and how you prepare for these shows or talking to a bodybuilder and how that might be different than other sports.
It really is not too different than other sports, and I'll tell you why. Because my philosophy, when it comes to covering any sport, really, is that if I'm talking to an athlete, that athlete has a story, right? And my job in that instance is to get that story out of them, is to hear about their progression from the time that they were a kid, from the time that they were doing whatever they were before this sport, what led them into this sport, um, what what brought them to this sport, right? What made them catch that bug, and at what point did they figure they wanted to make a profession out of that sport, or a high level endeavor? Like if I'm talking to a college athlete, like what at what point did they realize they wanted to be like a college basketball player or what have you, right? Like I do boxing, right? Like many kids have a similar story, right? They got into trouble as little kids and somebody introduced them to a boxing gym, fell in love with it. But okay, you go from that to a certain point where now you realize you want to do this at a professional level. So similar to bodybuilding, right? Like a lot of people go to the gym, right? But like there has to be a very, but not everybody shows up on a bodybuilding stage. What was it that made you realize? Was it the fact that you looked in the mirror one day and you realized I look like a mutant? Was it somebody who came up to you at the gym and said, you know, you look amazing, you would look great on a bodybuilding stage? Or, you know, did you again see your favorite bodybuilder on Instagram and decide for yourself that that's what you wanted to do? Everybody has a story, right? And I feel as if one of the cool things that can come out of an interview is that you hear the bodybuilder talk. One thing my interview style, you know, since you're asking, I like to let the athlete talk. I will ask the question. I will sit back. I will let them talk because I want to hear, as a fan, I want to hear what it is that they want to say. I want to hear the stories. I don't want to feel as I don't want them to feel as if they're going to be giving an answer and they're going to be cut off at any second, because I want them to be able to freely talk, you know, because that's the way that they get into a groove and then really, you know, give you a lot of information that, again, you're going to get something out of it. Maybe something they say is going to help me set up my next question. So yes, I do like to get a good basis of information. Now, you know, look, there are some athletes, I mean, you know, relevant to bodybuilding that, you know, there's a reason I'm bringing them on the show. There's a reason that I'm interviewing them, right? Let's say I'm interviewing them at the Arnold Classic where we met, right? We met at the Meet the
The meet and
Athletes
greet.
event, right? The meet and
Yeah.
greet, right?
Yeah.
There are very common questions that I'm going to ask them, right? Because for all of those athletes that were on the Olympia stage just a few weeks prior, they all had the similarity in terms of they had a restrictive time schedule. They all had to make a decision, you know, on a fairly short notice that, all right, I got off the Olympia stage. The Arnold Classic is only a few weeks away. You know, what made you decide to compete at the show given the short turnaround, right? Um, Similarly, okay, well, realistically, what kind of adjustments can we expect to see out of you from what we saw at the Olympia to now, you know, on the on the Arnold Classic stage? So, you know, you try to draw on the relevant things for it because, you know, as someone who's, I guess, a reporter, I'm a mouthpiece for the people. I have to think about this. What does the audience want to hear? What is newsworthy at this moment? Right? Like, um, let's say an athlete, you know, got into a car accident a few weeks ago. I have to ask them about that. Like, you just got into an accident, and here you are a few weeks later, you're stepping on a bodybuilding stage. You know, you're like, how are you able to recover from that? What kind of rehab protocols are you in? What mental, you know, mentally did you have to do to overcome, you know, such a traumatic event? And now here you are, you know, literally about to strip down, be semi-naked in front of 30,000 fans, what have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so there's so many different things. You know, what I try to do is try to learn a little bit about each of the competitors. And now, again, if you follow them on social media, you'll know a little bit just because you follow them. And so you know what they're doing, you know what they're going through. You see them posting updates, you see them, you know, doing whatever it is. Um, you take mental notes. Sometimes I will take real notes. Sometimes I will literally write down on a, you know, on a notepad app, you know, a couple little tidbits about, you know, about this bodybuilder, so I can build questions off that. So I do believe in preparation. I'm very regimented when it comes to preparation about, you know, a bodybuilder, about a show, about, you know, something that I could ask them. Somebody else is not going to ask them,
Mm-hmm.
right? I pride myself on trying to bring about something out of the athlete or something that, you know, I'm going to bring in one of my reports that somebody else is just not going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So those are, you know, preparation is key and all that. But I think that that is fairly similar, you know, as it relates from bodybuilding to other sports. But again, every sport has its own unique set of things that apply to it, right? Like with bodybuilding, you are going to ask them about something relating to their diet. You are going to ask them something related to their training. You know, as an example, like, okay, Sean Clarita, right? Sean Clarita was one of my favorite interviews in the Arnold Classic meet and greet because there were so many different unique things about him. One, you know, Sean Clarita is, I guess, a quote unquote career 212 bodybuilder, right? But he's not competing in the open against the big boys. And again, at that, a few weeks after winning the 212 Olympia title for the second time in 3 years. Okay, so that's a storyline right there. Then it's okay, well, hey, Sean, is this 212? Is this 212 to the open move for good, or is this just for the show? Right. That's another storyline right there. Similarly, he just had a baby after the Arnold after the Olympia. Him and his wife had a baby. All right, you literally became a father and just stepped off, winning the 212 Olympia, and now with all those things, short turnaround, having a baby, you're now competing against the big boys at the Arnold Classic against the likes of Nick Walker, Big Ramy, you're right, Samson Dowda,
Hmm.
Andrew Jack. You're going up against those guys. So now you go from Olympia, becoming a father for the first time, and now having to step on the gas to compete against some of the best in the world. So you see where I'm going with this, right? Because those are things that I feel like you have to ask. Those are things that fans want to hear about.
Hmm.
And those are things that, are going to truly get something out of the athlete, that now you're able to feed your audience or something that maybe they didn't know, or maybe it's something they didn't think of, but now they know. And now it's like just the whole viewing experience of them was a lot more complete.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you broke that down because I don't know if people realize like how difficult your job can be because you have to do your diligence, your homework. You have to, be prepared on the spot. I do interviews on my YouTube channel. Sometimes I blank, because we're human. So it takes a lot of skills and that type of thing. And I think that you do a really good job with it.
Thank you.
Yes. So we're getting here toward the end, and I just kind of want to end with asking you maybe some final thoughts on
Sure.
covering the bodybuilding world.
So, I mean, my involvement in bodybuilding has had so many different twists and turns, different shapes. I mean, again, there's the work that I do for RX Muscle, and even what it is that we're doing for RX Muscle. It's a constantly evolving equation, right? Because, as I've said, you have to understand what it is that the bodybuilding audience wants, and those wants are constantly evolving, right? So the challenge of keeping up with that, and the challenge of refreshing your own content, that is something that it is an exciting thing. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a letdown, because sometimes you'll try something new, thinking to yourself, all right, this is going to be received really well, right? The fans are going to love this, and then it's not, or it falls flat on its face, and all of a sudden you have to realize that whatever it is that you tried, that new thing didn't work, and you had to move on, right? Because we can now say, oh, no, screw that. Fine, they didn't like this first time, but I'm going to try to give this to them again and again and again. All of a sudden, you're force feeding. You're force feeding somebody that, just because you put in a lot of effort doesn't mean anything, right? And that's what you quickly realize, that between the bodybuilding audience, other audiences, social media in general, the world is not fair, right? The world does not care about like what you went through to get this piece of content up on air, or what it is that you went through to develop this new content idea. They just want what they want, and if they like it, they'll stay and they'll watch. If they don't like it, you'll know about it. So those are things that I constantly have to monitor, take notes, adjust, assess, reassess. So I think that's sort of where I am with that. But again, me personally, as it relates to bodybuilding, you know, I'm happy with where I'm at, just because again, I have worked hard to cultivate relationships that I didn't have previously, that I'm now starting to develop, starting to understand different players in the industry, different personalities in the industry. And not everything has to be a business transaction. I think that's the other thing I've realized. Like you and I spoke, you and I have been in touch. There's no business transaction at play here. Like you and I are having a conversation right now. We're having a conversation that's perhaps enlightening your audience on the realities of the bodybuilding industry, the bodybuilding media coverage, how it's covered, and yeah, like what challenges come to light when you're trying to cover the sport. But I've met a lot of people where in the beginning I would meet them, and again, I didn't really know what to say to them. I didn't really know what to ask them for. Right? I felt as if, like, if I talk to someone big, that there's got to be something on the back end of that. There's got to be something that either they want, something I want. And then I just kind of came to the point now where I'm like, sometimes the best relationships that you could build are the ones where you could just shake somebody's hand, chat with them for a little bit, have a couple of laughs, and then you're off to the next, they're off to the next. So
Hmm.
that's kind of where I am right now. I mean, yes, I do have aspirations. You know, uh, again, with the work that I've done with the Olympia and the work that I did with the Arnold Classic, yeah, obviously I'm hoping all of that will continue in its present form, and then however else they need me. I mean, because I do work very hard. I mean, as far as what it is that I bring as an announcer. Um, so I have aspirations in bodybuilding, outside of bodybuilding. Obviously, there's my work, as a basketball announcer, as a boxing commentator, as a boxing announcer. So all those things I'm working hard, in terms of moving them forward.
Hmm.
But and as far as bodybuilding is related, again, there are things that we are working on right now on RX Muscle that we're hoping we're going to be able to, roll out in the very near future. But again, this isn't something where it's just a matter of, you know, for RX Muscle. This is really, it's what we do for the bodybuilding world, right? There are a lot of things that we do that Dave Palumbo could be making a lot more money if he wanted to just kind of keep these things to himself, or keep it on some like behind a paywall, behind some subscription model of sorts. But he's been very generous as far as providing his knowledge, providing his education. I mean, this is I as a marketer, I work with so many different experts in their industry. I've worked with people who work in real estate, credit repair, finance. I've literally worked with somebody who designed custom suits. I mean, as far as experts go, he might be the brightest as far as his area of expertise when it comes to diet, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to supplementation and all that, all the like. So, and then his creativity as far as how the sport should cover, it's been a real treat helping bring his vision, as far as bodybuilding coverage to the bodybuilding masses. So I think, you go through different transition phases, but I think we're definitely at another one. But I think, you're going to start to see some things come out very soon in RX Muscle that, again, it's not just for us, but it's something that I feel as if the bodybuilding audience is going to enjoy. And I think that's really ultimately what it's all about.
Well, awesome, awesome, Siddique. Well, I think you're doing a great job. Keep it up. I enjoy your commentary. I enjoy seeing you on RX Muscle. It's one of my favorite channels to catch all the bodybuilding news, and I highly recommend people subscribe to it. And I'll be seeing you at the Olympia. I'll be seeing you at the
Awesome.
Arnold, and I'll be listening for the voice of God.
Well, Lisa, no, seriously, I know you've been trying to get me on the show for quite some time, and I had a lot of different things that just kept coming up, kept coming up. So I sincerely appreciate you persevering and getting me on. I really did enjoy this. You do a great job. And what I would tell you and what I would tell your audience, because I know you probably have a lot of, people in your audience that are content creators, that are, trying to develop their own you know, uh, personalities, their own presence, on YouTube or the like, um, you're gonna have to put up with a lot of roadblocks. There are gonna be a lot of times where, especially in the beginning, you're just gonna look at the view count and say to yourself, ah, this is really worth it. Am I really gonna go anywhere with this? Am I really gonna, get anywhere with this? And what I would tell you is this: find your own voice, find your own niche, understand what your audience wants to hear, what they want to hear out of you, and what it is that you specifically can bring to feed that, right? Because everybody has something very unique to offer. You had to figure that out.
Hmm.
But the key is to not just get discouraged early on and just say to yourself, eh. 'Cause if you look at the YouTube landscape, you look at social media, there are a lot of once upon a time stories. There are a lot of channels that may have like 12 videos total, and the last video was from the year 2019. Why? Because somebody started, they didn't get the results that they wanted immediately. Maybe one video got a decent amount, but then you go back to low view count, low view count. People get discouraged. Why? Because they get started sometimes because they just see somebody else, another channel that has these whopping amount of views,
Hmm.
and they see that and they think to themselves that that's going to be them, or that's going to be them right away. And when it doesn't happen for them, they just tend to abandon all that. Understand why you got into this in the first place.
Hmm.
And the reason you got into this in the first place is because you do want to spread a message of positivity. You do want to, spread your own ideas,
Hmm.
and you want to stay true to that. You want to stick true to that. So
Yeah.
that would be my message. to you to keep up the great work, keep up all the good that you're doing. I do follow your channel. I
Oh,
see the
thanks.
work that I see the work you're putting in, and I'm proud of what you're doing. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you at the Olympia in November.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Siddique. I appreciate you taking the time to be on my channel. I know you got to hop over to the RX channel and do a commentary with Dave Palumbo.
Yeah, so we have a show coming up right now, so I'm gonna head over there. But again, Lisa, I greatly appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to the other pieces of work that you put out.
Awesome. Awesome. And if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be alerted to when the next video drops. Thanks for watching.